Okay, so the three other things that I want to look at for this class period, so we start with the value of questioning that we were just talking about, but then also thinking about it in terms of why we study religion. So there can be different motivations and they can be mixed motivations. We can also think about how we study religion, and I think that's really valuable. So the why is something that I think is good to be self-aware about, but I think the how is more practically helping us as we vault into the semester and we kind of look at different religions and religion in general and that sort of thing. And then what I really like to do is have a chance to kind of test out and apply some of what Kessler's talking about and what we're talking about today through sort of a case study. So we're going to watch a short video on a voodoo possession ritual in New York, and we're going to think about how we understand this, how we encounter it, and how we should do this, and what sort of takeaways we have from it. So if we think about the question of why, let me bring this up. So when we think about the question of why study religion, what's an idea that Kessler talks about? What's one reason? What's one motive for why we might study religion? Yeah, Maggie?
This is to develop a global perspective, so to learn about the regions of the world, see what different cultures where they're coming from.
Why would that be important? Why would that be valuable? So some of the, absolutely. So what I want us to do is kind of keep pushing that a little bit and think about why that would be a good thing to develop a global perspective. And there are lots of different ways to think about that. Sophia?
With that, he kind of says it's important to get something diversity, like even
Yeah, okay, all right, good. So there might be, we can think about it in terms of acceptance. We can think about it in terms of tolerance. We might be able to shoot higher than that, but that could be one way to think about it. What else? Yes, good.
I'm like going to nursing, so you're going to like see a lot of different people with a lot of different viewpoints, and like even religion is really important. Like I know it's a big thing. Muslims, like they have to eat certain things, and they can't have certain animal products in some certain shops. Well, so if you're religiously competent, then you'll be able to recognize that and treat people respectfully and be a better professional.
Okay, so just on a level of human respectfulness, right? But then also it might have this practical element of in my job and as a profession, as a career sort of thing. Okay, so those might be some ways to spin out the importance of developing a global perspective. There would be more that we can think about too if you want to add more, but other reasons that you can think of in terms of why study religion. Yeah, Nicole.
Just have a better understanding of it and kind of see how like other people view the world. Certain like different religions have different ways that they behave because of this is the religion they follow, so they have to behave a certain way to whether that be to progress into the next life or just to be a better human.
Okay, and we can kind of keep pushing that a little bit, like why would that be valuable? Can we think of anything else to add to what we've already said?
I think like to have an end goal in life or something that you're working towards. So, I mean, like your life has meaning in a sense, like of why you're doing what you're doing.
Okay. Yeah, we could unpack that more. I would put that in terms of the big questions of life, meaning and purpose of life, sorts of things. Okay. Adele?
That helps us understand like how different countries like go about things. Like for example, like the U.S. mentions God in a lot of the laws and like, the Constitution and all that. So like different countries have different things based on religion.
And why would that be good to know?
Just because like when you visit, when you meet someone from the or like setting a time, it's good to know that kind of stuff.
Why?
Because it can impact like the way they lead a country, the way they live and stuff like that.
Okay, good. So I'm already doing the nagging, annoying thing of asking why. Like I'm teaching you the value and annoying part of asking questions. Yeah, Faith.
As that also to like communication, so if those like understand somebody else's, like, and then we'll just cause a bigger issue.
Good. Yeah, I heard you start with communications more narrowly, but I'm kind of hearing like a broader sense of just how we get along with different people on a personal, individual level, right? So you can kind of think about this like, I've got a friend who might be a different religion than I am. So how do I be a good friend to that person? That's part of their identity. So it's part of understanding who they're. If I'm going to have a view on politics in my community or in my country, it's good to have a sense of how other countries view things like religion and religious diversity and that sort of thing. So you can go like macro scale, macro level too. So, Cadence.
I feel like also just having some self-realization of your own religion and how your religion functions in greater society.
Let's unpack that. So say a little bit more about what you have in mind.
Like maybe certain actions you do in your religion or things you take can affect other people that you can realize because you have a mindset of a singular religion.
Okay.
The society.
Okay. All right. Good. That could be a way to spin out the global perspectives, different perspectives, sort of thing. So sometimes the encounter of and this doesn't just apply. A lot of what we're talking about doesn't just apply to religion. So if I'm learning about a different culture, yeah, I'm learning about that different culture, but I'm also learning about my own culture as a result of that. So I'm learning about other religions. I'm learning more about maybe a religion that might be more familiar to me as a result of that. Other ideas that come to mind in terms of, so again, to reset this, we're talking about why study religion, what would be valuable about studying religion, what can you gain, what other motives might there be for studying religion? Put it this way, why are you guys studying religion right now? Yeah. Sorry, Maggie.
To like fulfill all the requirements.
It's required, right? Kessler mentions that. That's why most of you are in the room, if we're being honest, right? Yeah.
Also, I feel like I'm uneducated on other religions other than my own, so I think it's valuable for everyone to step outside their comfort zone and learn why other people are practicing their religion.
Yeah, and I'm hearing that kind of as a way to express in your own way the maybe the understanding of others as a way to understand myself, right? I might, and I don't, not to put this on you, but I might think that I do understand my own religious tradition. I learn about others, and that might raise questions for me, or that might highlight something that, you know what, I thought I understood this about my own religious tradition, but maybe I don't. And so it kind of, it's sort of this outward move that then turns back in, right? Anything else come to mind in terms of why study religion? So I want to turn our attention to, I believe it's question 3 on the sheet, which he asks about as a review question from page 12. So just to kind of particularize and personalize this a little bit more, the question is, why do you want to study religion? And how do your motives relate to the reasons given for studying religion discussed in the chapter? So some of you might have been speaking from within your own experience when we're talking about these ideas, but I'm just curious, like how you would position yourself. So let's move beyond, yeah, it's a requirement. Okay, we can add something else to that. So what would you want to be getting out of this experience? Why do you want to study religion? Kid?
One thing I'm really curious about is like the concept of organized religion versus like personal religion, and like if most people would still hold their religion if it wasn't for organized religion.
Okay. So again, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but the really common sentiment of like the difference between spirituality and religiosity might be one way to think about that. So a lot of people, again, when I was talking about kind of declining numbers in at least commitment to organized religions, sometimes is articulated, it's expressed in terms of, well, I believe in God or I'm spiritual, but I'm not really religious, meaning I don't really attend, I don't really have, in terms of labels or something along those lines. So it might be interesting to explore what other people's takes on that sort of question is. Like, what is the appeal of organized religion? Maybe it doesn't appeal to me, so what are you in it for? Or I am in an organized religion, what else might this look like? So that could be a possibility. So, okay. How about a few more people? What other thoughts do you have in terms of why you in particular, like what you might want to be getting out of this, Abby?
I think like just globally, there's an increasing amount of religious intolerance, and so just being educated on like other religions, like to a significant or substantial level, just like myself and other people, can help like kind of combat that, because if you like hear religious intolerance and stuff like that, like about a religion that like you've learned about, then you can better like educate other people and kind of like just
Yeah.
a better citizen.
Great. Yeah. The intolerance is obviously a problem socially, not just in terms of religious intolerance, but political differences and a whole host of things. Like, we can do a lot better job of getting along with people who are different than us or who have different beliefs than we might have. So that would speak to that concern, right? Any other thoughts in terms of why? The motivations? Is there a way that you can kind of articulate maybe something that we've talked about, but in your own way? Caitlin?
I think like curiosity.
Yeah.
Like sometimes you just want to learn new things about things you don't know.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Good. Yeah. Billy?
I agree with like curiosity, and then I just want to be like a more like well-rounded and like knowledgeable person. And then I think like related to those reasons, that can just help me be more understanding.
Yeah. Good. And that you're making an argument for a liberal arts education more broadly, right? I think in that sense, that notion of intellectual curiosity and being well-rounded and just a better informed person. I've heard, so I don't know where you guys stand on math, but a lot of people will complain about learning math in school at younger ages and that sort of thing, and wonder why it's important to learn math, particularly higher level forms of math that they're not going to necessarily use the rest of their life. So I've seen it expressed in terms of a question of, there's a student who goes to a calculus teacher and says, why do I have to learn calculus? I'm never going to use calculus in my life. And you're not going to, 0.01% of us are ever going to use calculus in the real world or whatever. So what's the value in learning calculus? And the teacher's response is, if any of you have ever played sports, been on a team, and you practice, you go and lift weights. And the argument is, you're not necessarily lifting weights to play that sport, but why do you work out and why do you lift weights? Yeah. To get stronger, right? And it's the exact same reason that you study calculus. It's not necessarily always a practical means to an end, but it makes you better. It makes you better. It makes you stronger. It makes you more well-rounded and that sort of thing. So that can apply to a variety of disciplines, including if we're talking about the study of religions. The other thing that I would add on pages 11 and 12 that Kessler talks about are sort of these almost practical reasons that a couple of you were highlighting. And I like the way that he puts this at the bottom of 11. So the academic study of religion can prepare you for a career if you're going into that area or whatever. It also aids in preparation for other kinds of careers. So last lines on 11, he says, a wide variety of employers are looking for people who are tolerant of diversity, are able to learn from others, are adaptable to new situations, have knowledge of history and international affairs. Studying religion can help cultivate the qualities many employers find attractive. So even on a practical level, it can be really valuable, in other words. So, okay. Okay, so let's shift into the question of then how to go about studying religion. So this is kind of along the lines of like best practices, some guidelines, some considerations that we might have for how to approach the study of religion. And one of the ideas that he talks about that I want us to think about would be the idea of the insider-outsider dynamic. So what's the difference? What disadvantages come with each of these perspectives? What's a disadvantage that comes with, for example, the insider's perspective?
You're kind of going into the study of religion with your like end answer already there. Like you kind of already know what you believe, and so you're going to be more narrow-minded because you're only probably looking at your religion, or you might not be as tolerant of other religions.
Okay, all right. What other disadvantages might come with an insider's perspective?
Just being like less critical of your own religion and being hypercritical of others.
Okay, yeah, because again, it is really meaningful and it carries a lot of weight. Like I want to believe that I'm right because the stakes are really high in many cases, right? Other disadvantages that come with an insider's perspective.
He talks about how like insiders can be really defensive, and this can like seize honesty, so you end up like ignoring or like hurting and suppressing other voices, just because of how prejudiced you can be, not necessarily that you will be, you can be.
Okay, good. Anything else come to mind? Yeah.
To add on to that, insider's perspective, kind of have like a lot of bias towards your own religion. You kind of form like a negative opinion of other religions because you want to think that yours is kind of like the correct one, even though that may or may not be.
So you might. So if I'm within a religious tradition, I'm studying my own religious tradition, I might have a positive bias. I might assume that this is all good and there are no flaws or something along those lines, right? Anything else come to mind? What about advantages to an insider's position, an insider's perspective? What would be good about that?
You can actually like, feel the emotion of practicing your religion rather than just viewing it.
Okay, yeah, good. Adele?
And just from understanding my own belief, it's something can
Right. Other positives, other advantages that would come with an insider's approach to the study of a particular religion?
It's more like personal to you, and so you're not viewing it as like something critical, or you're not like tearing it apart, and it's more personal why you want to do it.
Yeah. You've experienced it from the inside, right? So you've got a vested interest. You're not trying for objectivity. The subjectivity is something to embrace. You've experienced it. You have a very close view of whatever it is, and that vested interest, right? And then let's consider the outsider. Disadvantages to the outsider. So a lot of this is just flipping around what we were just talking about with the insider, but I just want to spell it out. So the disadvantages to the outsider's perspective.
I feel like you're becoming more like hypercritical or jaded about.
So that might be true of a religion not my own. Very frequently, if you're talking about scholars of religion, it might be this cynical view or jadedness toward religion in general, right? There's nothing to religion. It's all psychological projection, or it serves a sociological function or something like that. But that's all that's going on with religion. What were you gonna add? Yeah.
You're detached, so it's harder to understand or like fully comprehend what's going on.
Yeah. Okay. It might be new to you. Like by definition, it's something new to you. So there's a learning curve that involves there too. That's involved there too. Yeah. Genevieve.
You might struggle with like understanding why other people do it.
Mhm.
Just like so far away from it.
Yeah. The question of why would you believe this? Why would you do X, Y, and Z? Any other thoughts? Disadvantages, the outsider's perspective? And then just to finish it out, what advantages would come from an outsider's perspective? Yeah.
You have an opportunity to do what you're going to do and like explore and learn about different ways, which can, like we talked about.
Yeah, good. Anything else? Yeah.
Maybe you have like the opportunity to maybe pursue the religion that you was like looking at, and maybe you feel connected and you are able to feel that emotional connection to it. So it's something that like you can start practicing.
Okay, good. Yeah.
Who's your, as unbiased within all religions?
There's at least typically there's at least an effort towards objectivity and lacking biases and that sort of thing. That's not necessarily always realized, but at least that's kind of the ideal, certainly, right? Okay. So I think one interesting way to try this out, to test out some of these ideas, if you take a look at page 12, one of the under the exploration section, at the very bottom of 12, number 2 is what I'm looking at. So Kessler gives us, Wilfred Cantwell Smith, a historian of religion and Islamic scholar, once said that no statement made by a scholar of religion is valid unless a religious believer could accept it as correct. So what do you think about that claim? So no statement made by a scholar of religion is valid unless a religious believer could accept it as correct. And so I think I'm understanding that in terms of no statement made by an outsider is valid unless an insider could accept it as correct. I think we can simplify it in that way, but I'm not entirely sure. But for the sake of conversation, let's take it that way. So do you think that's true? In what sense is that true? In what sense might it not be? What do you think, Caitlin?
I don't think it's true in all cases, but I feel like there are certain nuances that outsiders miss. Like, if you're not a Christian and then you hear like a priest say, "This is my body," then you could think that like cannibalism is happening.
Yeah.
So like there are certain cases in which outsiders could miss nuances.
Okay. Yeah.
I think maybe in some cases it could be right, because if an insider is like practicing this religion so like constantly, then maybe they can like be a little bit close-minded and like have their own opinion, and an outsider can see it in a bigger picture, or like sees or like understand it in a deeper way, rather than like just thinking that the insider knows like all of the information and understands it completely.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, I feel like it's true in the sense that if an outsider says something religious, like obviously it's not going to be valid because they're not religious. So if an insider is like, "Oh yeah, that's correct," that's valid.
So unless you've got that agreement from the insider, it's not valid, you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay. What do others think about that, Caden?
I feel like the statement is really only true if it's like every person in that religion could be challenged, because every person who's part of that religion is their religion different. So it can't be just one person saying it's right, so that means it's right and that's wrong.
Yeah, very good. It starts to beg the question of what scholar of religion are we talking about, first of all, and then what you're also raising is when he's talking about it in terms of a religious believer, well, wait a second, not every religious believer within a religious tradition is going to agree. So who am I asking? It raises the question of who gets to speak for, who represents a religion, right? So that's a way to complicate the claim. That's very good. Other thoughts? You could think about this culturally too. So like I keep saying, we're talking about religion, but you can apply this more broadly. So if I said a scholar of a given culture, no statement made by a scholar of a culture, an outsider to a culture, is valid unless a representative from that culture would accept it as true, as correct. Other flaws that you might see with that way of framing it. Yeah.
Like not everyone follows their religion to a T, or their culture to a T. They have, even within families, they do things differently that other people that follow that religion, like follow that culture, they do it differently in their family because someone in their like family generations ago started doing it this way and it resonated.
Yeah, good. So I'm hearing you kind of draw out more details kind of along the lines of what Cadence was giving us with the notion, well, not everybody in the particular culture or religion or whatever is going to agree on something, right? Yeah. Other flaws that, like, other ways that we might push back against Wilfred Cantwell Smith in this claim? Anything else come to mind? Yeah. So,
I think when it comes to like, I guess like an outsider perspective, like an observation of insiders, I'm sure there's like some people, like I said, you could like dismiss that observation, but I think there's still validity to an observation that is made by anybody. So I wouldn't necessarily argue it.
Yeah. They might, so think about when we were talking about advantages and disadvantages to the insider outsider thing. The advantages to the outsider is no, they don't have that internal view of things. They're not maybe as personally invested, but that can be an advantage because they don't necessarily have that bias, because they have a different perspective on things. And so maybe they see something that you might not as an insider, for example. So at one point, Kessler talks about it in terms of like a therapist. If I go in, I think I have a good understanding of myself. My therapist might recognize something and diagnose something in me that I was not really fully aware of, right? There's an advantage to that outsider's perspective sometimes. The other thing that I would highlight that struck me with this is that it kind of assumes that the scholar of religion is not a religious believer. So it raises the question, like, can't you do both? Can't you be both? And so sometimes when Kessler is wanting to, Kessler has a tendency to want to make these hard and fast distinctions, these clear-cut distinctions in ways that in reality are kind of sometimes blurred. So can you be a lot of scholars of religion are religious themselves, right? And so that adds another problem, another way to push back on this. And he recognizes, if you go to page 3, there are times in this chapter where he kind of admits what I'm calling him out for. So second to last paragraph on page 3, he says, I've identified the academic study of religion with the outsider's viewpoint in contrast to the insider's viewpoint. However, the picture I have painted is distorted. None of us is completely inside or outside in our viewpoints. Even if we practice no religion, religious traditions and values have so permeated our cultures and societies that, like fish, we live in a sea already containing religious currents. There's no view totally outside everything and no view totally inside. These extremes are ideal types. They characterize the ends of a continuum. The real situation is more complex. The outsider can be as prejudiced as the insider, though in a different direction. Okay, so admitting like, okay, this is for the second conversation, and these are helpful categories to a certain extent, but they also have limitations. All right, so throughout this section, throughout the chapter, he gives us a variety of other sort of characteristics or things to keep in mind for how to, what guiding principles should we have for the study of religion? What other things can we highlight? So moving off of the insider-outsider dynamic, what are other valuable traits to have or practices to carry out when we're studying religion? Yeah. So,
This person talks about this like open-mindedness.
Uh-huh.
And I really like how that being open isn't necessarily like a refusal to draw conclusions, but it's not like it's just like your willingness to like be more willing to learn about other things, even though you might be wrong about some things.
Yeah. Good. Somebody else say more about openness? Are you understanding that? What he means by that? Good.
I really like when he was talking about openness. He was like, if you're wrong, then you get closer to the truth. And I thought that was like interesting. It's like either way, you're still kind of learning. If you find that you're right, then you're right to begin with. If you find that you're wrong, then you're like, oh, well, then this is where I should go.
Yeah, good. I've seen that sentiment expressed in terms of, if you think about like the scientific method, if you have a quote unquote failed experiment, it's not really a failure, but you're close, like you've ruled out something, so you're closer to the truth. in that way. So, okay. What's another characteristic or trait that he is encouraging us to have in terms of studying religion? Yeah, Cadence?
I like when you talked about critical tolerance
Uh-huh.
because I feel like most people tend to study religion in an open-minded way and have to kind of accept the things that you're not necessarily open to accepting, and that kind of amplifies it and don't necessarily.
Okay, good. Let's say more about critical tolerance. Where is he talking about this? Unpack it a little bit more. What do we mean by tolerance? What's added with that label of critical tolerance? So tolerance is pretty straightforward. What does he mean by critical tolerance, though? Anybody find where he's talking about this? What page? What page are you on, Maggie?
Well, 8 and 9.
Yeah. What would critical tolerance mean? What would that look like? Like, can we think of maybe an example? Is it Audrey?
Yeah. Like it says, an attitude that endorses freedom of religion, but does not necessarily approve of every religious belief and practice.
Okay. So how would you put that in your own way?
Like someone who believes like in the freedom of like choosing like a religion, but maybe being like more biased towards one's own religion.
Okay. Because you might think it's the right thing to do and it's teaching me the right things, right? The other thing that we could add to the why study religion is a connection with morality and ethics. It gives me a sense of right and wrong. So we might connect the idea of critical tolerance along those lines. That might be a hint. Adele, what are you thinking?
I was gonna kind of just say like being kind to those, like just because they have a different religious view than you and don't agree with them at all, like they'll be kind and learn about why they really will. Like I wouldn't agree with the statements, but I'm not gonna be like for that,
Okay.
I guess. And like I still would want to understand why they believe that.
Okay.
I guess.
So that's emphasizing especially the tolerance part, right? Where does the critical part come in, Caitlin?
It's the tolerance paradox. You can be tolerant, but you shouldn't be tolerant to be intolerant, which therefore means you have to be intolerant sometimes, which is so silly. But like if somebody is being prejudiced, then you don't want to be tolerant towards their prejudice, but you do want to be tolerant to everyone.
Okay.
So there's like a limit to your tolerance depending on.
Okay, all right, yeah, Cadence.
Well, so Krista mentions Jonestown, like the mass suicide. I think the critical point comes in. It's like I'm pretty sure everyone can agree that a mass suicide is not good. It's ultimately not a good thing, and it's not something you should support or try to push forward. So that's where that critical aspect comes in of the tolerance.
Yeah, so the tolerance, I can be open. So the openness piece, I can be open to differences. I can be respectful of differences. I can be curious about differences, but there might still be a limit point to that. That doesn't mean that I necessarily accept, not just that I don't accept that for myself, for my personal belief, but I can still have the grounds to say, I think this is wrong. So that becomes a connection in terms of ethics or morality, for example. So I can accept that this religion does this or believes this or something along those lines, but I can still say, you know what, this practice I find morally problematic, something along those lines. Okay, so it's not just tolerance, but critical tolerance. Okay, so this applies especially in terms of thinking about others. What's another trait that he talks about? Yeah.
He talks about honesty and
Mhm.
like taking responsibility for like your willingness to learn about your religion. Like someone can say they're religious or Christian or Catholic, but it's up to them to actually act on it and be religious. And so only they know how religious they are.
Yeah. Okay. So and only in honesty in terms of what my own perspective is as a scholar of religion and where I'm coming from and what possible bias I might have and that sort of thing. So honesty about myself and where I'm coming from, right? What else? Other characteristics, other traits.
He mentions critical intelligence. Like you actually have to like break things down, like analyze like the reasons like these people believe these things, not just like at the surface level.
And I think that one applies more to the self. So you absolutely can apply it to others, right? So there's a role for reason in the study of religion. It's an academic pursuit. So there's a role for reason and rationality and these sort of things. But I think the critical tolerance, especially we're thinking about when we look at others' differences, the critical intelligence, it's this notion of how am I applying this to myself? And I think it relates to that honesty piece also. Yeah.
I also want to touch on, you said that the word critical isn't always a negative
Yeah,
notion.
good.
That we benefit by knowing when our judgments are right.
Good. Yeah. We almost all of us hear that person is being critical of me. That person is criticizing me. That we almost all hear that as a negative thing, and that's how most of us use it. But that's absolutely really good, really important to remember to highlight. So the other one that I want to draw out that he talks about is sympathetic imagination. I can spell it. He is on page 8. So here he talks about the study of religion and using sympathetic imagination requires projecting ourselves into the viewpoint of others and trying to see the world from their perspective. So this is a lot of what we talked about the last category when we're talking about why study religion, and we're saying developing different perspectives or comparative perspectives and that sort of thing. As much as possible, seeing the world through the lens of another person, through the eyes of another person. There are obvious limits to that. How far can we actually extend that? But it's still well worth the effort to make to try to move in those directions. Okay. Okay. So what I want to do now is have us kind of apply some of these ideas that Kessler's been talking about, that we've been talking about today, to sort of an example, a case study. So what I'm going to have us do is watch part of a video on a voodoo possession ritual in New York. And I'm not really going to say more about it in terms of the nature of the religion or anything like that. But I want you thinking about it in terms of especially these how characteristics. So are you an insider or an outsider? Are you exhibiting openness and honesty and critical tolerance and sympathetic imagination? And what sort of takeaways do you have? And what questions does it raise? And that sort of thing, okay? So let's see. We don't have sound.
Hi, it's Thomas. We're in East New York outside a basement voodoo temple run by a priestess named Mama Edeline. Tonight she's going to be summoning the same fiery spirits that
Anybody have any ideas in terms of what I'm missing? Sorry, what?
The audio out.
Which would be,
Should I just copy?
yes, thank you.
Okay, it should be on this because it says Intel, but maybe these are what we want.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Hi, it's Thomas. We're in East New York outside a basement voodoo temple run by a priestess named Mama Edeline. Tonight she's going to be summoning the same fiery spirits that helped the Haitian slaves overthrow their French masters in the early 1800s. Maybe.
Can you guys hear okay? I've got everything maxed out, so you're best with it.
This will kick off something fiery for us. Voodoo started in Haiti as a clandestine way for African slaves to practice their traditional religion. When the French tried to force Christianity down their throats, the slaves simply took the major spirits, or Loa, and matched them with the Catholic saint they most closely resembled, then pretended to worship those guys instead.
Sorry, I think it's coming through the computer, but not through the speakers, so let me at least do that.
Do you have to know a spirit for it to possess you? Do you have to ask it to?
All of us on earth, we are spiritual someone. The spirit likes you, you want to live in you, you get possessed by the spirit.
Is it possible I'll be possessed by one of these spirits, or will it be?
I don't know, it depends on them.
In Haiti, a divine spirit is called a Loa.
There are 121 Loa in the voodoo universe. Tonight's mass was focused on summoning the Petras, fire spirits, to possess or mount the people in the room. Then to let them speak through their bodies and offer advice and blessing.
Possession is the psychic phenomenon which occurs when the divinity becomes manifest. There are many subtle gradations of salutation, and these indicate the relative authority of the persons involved.
The first possession of the night was Ogun, the same Lo summoned in the lead up to the Haitian Revolution, and actually the spirit who told the slaves they should revolt. Ogun is a warrior spirit, a heavy smoker and rum drinker, and associated with fire and iron, so when he mounts a person, it usually leads to a lot of machete play and burning things, including money, which practitioners offer him from their pockets for luck. This may seem to us like a bunch of voodoo rum talk, but the day after our ceremony, one of the women in the room played the lottery using the visible numbers from the half-burnt bills on the floor and won $500. So there you go.
The way she behaves when she's, possessed by the spirits is legitimately trance-like. I'd chalk this up to legitimate possession.
Gede, the god of life and death, posted at the timeless crossroads at which all men one day arrive. So life and death become one and the same.
Next up was Gede, which are actually a whole family of Lo, headed by Papa Gede, the first person who ever died. The Gede are fertility spirits, which explains the penis staff and why their signature dance, the banda, looks like an even hornier version of Turkey. The Gede also watch over the graveyard and the dead, which they put powder on their face to resemble.
I don't drink, I don't smoke. But if I'm possessed by Ogo who can drink a bottle of rum, I will not smell like rum after that. Gede will come and smoke. I believe I will not get cancer from Gede smoking.
Right.
Just bow my body to smoke.
The spirit currently mounting Mama Edeline is Mambo Zila. Her sort of human mortar and pestle floor dance is called Pil Fe, which means the crushing of the leaves. In fact, the herbs they're crushing on her stomach right now will later be used to make the protective bath.
It is protection against everything, against getting sick, getting shot.
Can you tell me a little bit about being possessed by spirits? How does it feel?
I will not be able to tell you how it feels because when I'm in possession, I am not there. When I wake up, I'm tired. It's like I'm coming from the moon.
Voodoo salutes woman as the divinity of the dream, the goddess of love.
Okay, so we only have a couple minutes left, but what do you see going on there in terms of if you're obviously an outsider's perspective, you're coming into this, I'm assuming. So what do you see going on there? What's sort of familiar to you? What's different? What questions do you have? Are we thinking through critical tolerance? Are we thinking through sympathetic imagination? So what do you see going on there, Adele?
I was surprised how critical I was of it, but I was so soon.
Okay. Okay. Right.
And it was hard for me to like
Okay.
It was really hard for me to
Okay. So the challenges of exhibiting tolerance, especially, maybe.
the lady was like, I don't smoke or drink normally. And it was just almost seemed for like an excuse to sleep.
Okay. Right. Anybody else? Yeah.
I saw like a commonality, like community,
Mhm.
like the person I think I saw community, where they all gathered together.
Okay. Yeah. Good. What else do you see, Lily?
If they're like no longer being oppressed by the French, it makes me wonder why they're still using Christian art when most of those practices aren't really Christian, and like the most comparison I could make to like a Christian practice would be that of like in the Pentecostal denomination, where they
Yeah.
have like the tongues and stuff. This seems kind of similar to that, and it also makes me wonder how much social pressure there is to exhibit signs of possession when there may not actually be possession.
Okay, good. So very briefly, and we can think about this more. Don't back up. Give me like 2 more minutes. Very briefly, what we've got going on is a sense of challenges. So I purposely use something that is very different from most of our experiences, and somewhat the exotic nature, the sense of maybe it's difficult for me to be tolerant of this. This seems really far-fetched or outlandish or something along those lines. So the challenges involved with that. We can think about commonalities and similarities and differences. So a lot in terms of the use of music, and a lot in terms of the communal piece of it. It's a cleansing ritual. So you've got that across lots of different religions. We can think about differences that are more stark. But then it's also this idea of, as a scholar of religion, it's not my place to say whether this is real or not, but to explore, okay, I believe from their perspective it's real. So what impact does it have on them? What impact does that have in the community? And the sorts of questions along the lines that you're raising, Lily, like what role does this play in society, and why are these practices still meaningful to people, and that sort of thing. So, all right, thank you for staying a couple minutes after. I will see you next week. So have a great weekend.